Battlestar Galactica has actually been off the air as long as it was on the air. I know. Now, and when it finished, we all got addicted to it. Everybody who worked on it got addicted. We all had withdrawal symptoms when it ended. Tell me about your withdrawal symptoms. Tell me about what you went through when this show ended. This amazing experience went off the air. Start with Candace.
Who, me? No. The other one? No. My exit, as you should all probably know. If no one does know, you should probably get up and leave right now. Was slightly traumatic for everyone, myself included. And I have to be honest, I had to walk away from the show almost entirely when I left. I'd been living it for so long, and I'd gotten a beautiful opportunity to say goodbye to the character and goodbye to my fellow cast members, and that was sufficient for me at the time. And I just took time to myself. You know, living a character like that for so long as an actor, you do have to take time to kind of separate yourself once again, and to find out and remember who you are and who she was, and separate the two of them and get back to yourself. So there's sort of an emotional cleansing that happens. And I just missed everyone. So, you know, being on set or seeing clips or watching old shows was, got me a bit teary. Because I knew I wasn't going to be there for the final moments, you know, that final day that they called wrap. And it hurt my heart a little bit. So I went on a BSG vacation and watched a lot of Family Guy.
Richard, you too?
Yeah. For me, it was really emotional, I have to say, because you know, you're sitting here in the launch tube and you're getting ready to be flushed out into space, and it's also the final moment that, you know, I'm on the show. And, you know, after spending kind of almost 35 years with this series, this story, and, you know, we actors, we go from project to project, and every once in a while we get fortunate enough to be part of something that means something deeper to you, something that you care about, something that says something that you want to say as a human being. And so that story, the mythology, the backstory, the epic journey through space, struggling to survive, all that stuff I've related to. And then the political elements of it, of course, I got very much into that because I find so often that sometimes, you know, this democracy that is of the people, by the people, for the people, tends to not be by the people, for the people, of the people. And, you know, so often we don't get involved in our political process. We don't make our governments accountable. And I think all of that stuff touched me as Richard Hatch through Tom Zarek. And so I had a more personal stake, I guess, you know, in the show than normally I would have in most of the stuff that we get a chance to do. So it really, that show affected me on a deep level, and I'm sure many of you could say the same thing in whatever way the show touched you. So leaving the show is more than just leaving the show. It's leaving a family. Number one, we actors go from project to project. Very rarely are we in one place long enough to really bond and become a family. Or if we do, we have to move on very quickly. Here was a place that we could come home to, you know, every year and know that you're going to get to hang out with some incredibly visionary, creative, very talented people, getting to make something that you cared about. And every year you look forward to that. Even when you're not working, you knew you were coming back to do something special. So for me, as an actor, it was just a very, very, very powerful, enriching, heartfelt experience that I had with Battlestar. So that final episode, you know, I have to tell you, it's acting, we actors are affected by what happens to our characters, you know, it really touches us deeply. And I got to tell you, that was a very powerful moment. And just the reality of knowing this is your final moment. And it kind of struck me on so many different levels, because again, Tom Zarek's leaving, but also Richard Hatch is leaving. So it was kind of devastating for me. I had to really struggle with that and deal with that. And I can only say that it left me in a place where it's like once you touched love, real love, you want it again, right? Once you touch another individual and feel the impact of letting somebody in and really having that kind of connection, once you have that experience as an actor, you are now hungry for more. And so it's been a search to really go out and look for something that meaningful. And what it's really come down to for me, and it's really empowering, is no longer to be looking for, waiting for, but to get busy creating it and putting together, doing what you can in that moment to develop things that make you feel that alive, that communicate something that means something to you and that you feel would be powerful for the audience. So for me, I spent the last 4 or 5 years developing new properties, new projects, directing, writing, and like so many other actors up here, putting something together that you can really put your heart and soul into. So for me, you know, this Battlestar experience has been powerful, transforming, and I'm hoping, because I just think this story is too powerful. It has nothing to do with me being in it again or it coming back for me. I would love to see the story go on in some way.
Good morning. I will say that what Richard just said, and Candace, I mean, it goes for all of us. I think I'm very lucky. I'm 66. I know I look good. 66. So 5 years ago, I was 61 when the show went off the air. And I was very fortunate to receive what Richard has just talked about, this love that you have for life and the feeling that you get from doing something that really moves you to the point of where you find and search out to try to get that feeling again. Well, that happened to everyone on the show. But I only have to carry it for another maybe 50 years. Depending on, you know, if I make 120 or just 115. But my feeling, and I said this to everybody, cast and crew, and really the cast, is that I had never experienced anything like this. I had done a lot of work. I've been very fortunate. I've picked my material, and I've developed the material since 1981 with the Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. Right after I had done Blade Runner, I picked the next thing I did, which was the ballad, and then from then on, I've been developing my own pieces and producing them and directing them and writing them and acting in them whenever I could. And it's very difficult because I make one every 7 or 8 years. It's very difficult to do this. But so I've been inside of it, but nothing attacked me like this did. And it had to do with the story, and it had to do with the people involved. And so when this finished, it was radical. It was a radical ending, and it was, we haven't let go. None of us have let go. We see each other 5 years later. I talked to Hogan 4 days ago. I hang out with Callis almost every day. Bamber, whenever he's done in London, he's at my house. Callis actually lived with me for about 7 months. And that's Baltar for all you freaks. I live with Baltar. Along with his wife and his 2 kids, 3 kids, you know. But it's been a real difficult journey because, and like I said, I'm 66. I finished at 61. But a lot of these kids were like in their 20s. You know, they started, and this was the first thing they were doing. And oh my God, I just shook my head and said, man, this is going to be a long life for you. You know, I talked to Katie the other day, and Zakoff was like one of the ones that went, hey man, I want to get on with my life, you know. I talked to her, I'd say, about 2 months ago over at Trisha's house. And they invited us over there. We were all over there eating and drinking and just talking about other stuff. But man, it always was at the very tip of our understanding. And then finally Katie just says, man, I really miss it, man. I never thought I'd see this like this, but man, I really miss it. I said, man, you know, I do too, a lot. As much as any fan, as much as any one of you guys, after I know how many of you have watched the show over and over and over and over. You live by it, man, you know, and so do we, in our minds, you know, and in every day of our lives. We'll never get over it. I don't want to. I've learned to live with it, and I want to live with it for the rest of my life, knowing that at least for 5 years of my life, I did something on television that was worthwhile spending the time doing. And not that I didn't do great things in, American Family was a great thing on PBS. I really appreciated it. Miami Vice, well, that you could take it and leave it. I don't know exactly what that was other than a great big fashion show. Look at my Armani. My Versace's better than your Armani. That's like if I wore a wash and wear Woolworth's suit special for $80. I'll tell you, but yeah, I agree with Richard, I agree with Candace. She had to break away from it because she left the show earlier than we did. I was there in the very last moment of the very last day, and it was brutally difficult. I mean, even to this day, when I'm with Mary, and Mary and I hang out a lot together, Rosalind. And myself hang out a lot together, and she invites me over, and I've become one of her closest friends that she's ever worked with. I see myself over there a lot more than I see anybody else over there when I go over there. So, we'll see our other stars. Cosner's not over there every week. So, I would say that it touched all of us. So to answer your question, we are all on the same trip. Look at it, it's 11:30, the very first conference, the very first, panel, and this place is jammed. You guys are on the same boat we are.
Welcome aboard, Jose Bill. So this is kind of a follow-up, but at the final cast and crew event when they showed Daybreak, Ron Moore took the stage beforehand and he said, this has been a great ride, and for those of you for whom this is the first job in the industry, I'm sorry, because it doesn't get any better than this. So it's safe to assume you would agree with that.
Oh man, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, can you imagine being like, 28, 29 years old, you've done 5 years on Battlestar Galactica, and now you're gonna go on with the rest of your life? Good luck, it took me fucking 40 years to one. Now you're gonna be searching for it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Let's take one from you. Do we have a line? We have 2 lines. First one from the side. Make it a good one, no pressure.
Hello, it's an honor to be in the same room as you and every other fan here. My question is there any philosophical lesson that you learned from the show that you felt you were able to apply to your everyday life?
Is there any philosophical lesson from the show you apply to your everyday life? So Battlestar food. Have you applied the lessons?
The Tao of BSG.
Yes, the Tao of Battlestar.
Well, there were certainly many, as Eddie was saying, I was quite young when I first started the show. I was 23 and a very young actor, and I grew up not only as a young woman, but also as an artist under the tutelage of people like Edward James Olmos and Mary McDonald. So it was a profound experience. Playing Duella had its psychological pitfalls that I had to grow and learn through. But the process of becoming a whole person on camera, surrounded by other artists, was a unique one and quite a privileged one. And one thing I'll always remember is the expression of unique voice. That everyone has something to contribute, everyone plays a part. On that ship, there weren't many of us, but we all did what we could. We all came with our own ideas and philosophies and skills and challenges and upsets, and that's how we got along as humans together. So the uniqueness and the necessity of how different and complicated people are and how necessary all those roles are was something that I took away from the show in general. But there are a myriad of things that I could answer that question with. But I think that was one that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah. I think when you're in a premise like that, post-apocalyptic, end of the world type of thing, we see it in so much of literature, so many authors explore, the end of the world, the end of this, the end of that. And I think all of us have some of that on our mind about what would we do? What would we do if we were on a battlefield fighting for our lives? What would we do if all of a sudden the world went crazy? What would we do if all of a sudden, California, we were talking to some of the FEMA people, and they actually, with all the research they've done, said their research tells them in the next 10 years there could be a major upheaval in California, and they're planning where would they do, what would they do, who could they deal with first, and in many cases they couldn't deal with the people first. It might be 3 months of having to be on your own, right? Thinking about being on your own for 3 months, surviving for 3 months. I know people stockpiling guns, stockpiling food for 3 months, doing all this kind of stuff. Believe it or not, there's more people out there than you know. The question is, Battlestar really puts you in that circumstance where you're wondering, what would I do? What would come out of here? We all think we're the hero. We all think we would do the right thing. And what you learn in this show is that the very best of us are capable of doing the very worst thing imaginable under the right circumstances. And then you have to live with it and find a way to forgive yourself, to move on, because sometimes the very worst of you sits right next to the very best of you. And you can shift back and forth between those two extremes, and you have to make peace with that. And we're living times of major change right now. And on some level, I think it's not too far from all of us thinking about if things went crazy, things went nuts, what would we do? Would we show up? Would we be that person we think we're capable of being? And so for me, I think the biggest thing from Battlestar that I kind of got from it was that you really have to make your peace and learn to stop trying to see yourself in some narrowly aspected way. Like when you look in the mirror and you only look at yourself from a certain angle because you like your face from that angle, right? And then you see yourself on TV and you got to look at yourself the way everybody else will see you. Not too many actors like themselves when they see themselves on the screen. It takes a long time to kind of deal with all your imperfections. I think what I've learned is that we've got to embrace both the good and the bad, all of it, because at the end of the day, we're human beings. And we're capable of doing extraordinary things. And you might fall down and be the coward and run away one moment, and the next moment turn and save 10 people. You don't know. But I do think that we have something extraordinary inside of us, and sometimes when those kinds of events happen, that's when the door opens and we show up and we find out who we are. But we have to learn to love all sides of ourselves, make our peace with all sides, and know that again, at the end of the day, we're pretty amazing human beings. And I think I'm very optimistic. I think no matter what happens, I think somehow, some way, the very best of us will ultimately rise to the surface and triumph. That's my feeling.